Hello, Will. How are you?
Hey Aswan, nice
to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
You're here in Kazakhstan.
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? Look at the sunshine, big mountains in the background, place of learning and education behind us.
Yeah, it's a Kazakh British university actually. Yeah. So I have a questions for you. So the first question, you moved from Twitter to Snap.
Yes.
What was the scariest and most exciting part of this transition?
Thank you for starting off with an easy one, Aswan. I think whenever you're doing something new, there are elements that should be scary, right? And exciting at the same time. New people, new ways of working, for a new product, new business, new beliefs, new values within that business. And I think whenever you move into a company that's founder-led, that founder has a very particular vision and a pace of working and a way of working, and you need to be able to keep pace with that. So there's lots of excitement and fear that's bound up in that at a macro level. I think also, in particular with shifting from Twitter to Snap, I was really lucky at Twitter to work with some really talented people doing really interesting, innovative things, and then similarly moving to Snap, again, some really talented people, really talented product people doing really interesting, innovative things. So I think apart from the environment of the business itself and some of the things that are bound up in that, the product we were taking to market was quite intimidating because vertical video was not a thing. Augmented reality wasn't really something that brands knew anything about. We didn't really have any way of, any meaningful way of measuring or showing the impact of the products. So there were a lot of unknowns. I think that was probably similarly, very scary but very exciting.
Yeah, I understand. You helped make Snap leader in AR marketing. What was the moment when it felt too risky, and how did you push past the doubt?
Well, I think it's important to understand that within Snap and within the team that was building augmented reality on the product side and also partnering with brands and other partners to really elevate the format, there were a lot of very talented people working on that particular business stream and kind of set of tasks and opportunities. So I'd say that the first thing is recognizing that you have great people working with you, alongside you and on your team, so it's always a collaborative effort. I think some of the bigger challenges when we were bringing AR to market initially were around brands understanding exactly what the opportunity was, giving over to the idea of it being a space where their brand would be. But
because it looked fancy, they didn't understand how to use it, yeah?
Well, I think they were impressed by it and they could see the opportunity, but there was some trepidation around, okay, so we're going to give our brand into this space and a person can make whatever they want with it, so maybe there is some risk around that. So there was a certain amount of persuasion and trust building that needed to happen, and that's another kind of important factor. So understanding that you need to be collaborating with great people, understanding that you need to build trust with brands and show them how and why it works, and work with them through the process. No one was starting to work with Snap as an expert in augmented reality. It was something that everyone was learning with and continues to learn with. And then I think there was also perception among policymakers, government policymakers, people like the Advertising Standards Authority, who would quite rightly challenge us on what's the impact that this format has on people when you think about it in terms of body dysmorphia, or from the perspective of, okay, you're changing the way that people look, and does that have an impact on them from the way that they perceive themselves? And actually we worked really closely with the Advertising Standards Authority to make sure that what we were doing within augmented reality, because really you can do anything, your imagination is the limit, but that what we were doing was brought to the platform in a really responsible way, that the experiences that were delivered took into consideration what we might be, how we might be impacting people. And there were actually very considered efforts to reduce the levels of, say, skin smoothing or eye beautification and things like that. And those were
like a full standards, yeah?
Yeah, we tried to hold ourselves to a very high standard when it comes to those kinds of things, and actually focus on the things that that people were using AR for and bringing those to brands. So people were using it for self-expression, for communication, for framing moments.
But shifting from text-based world of Twitter to visual-first world of Snap, how did it reshape your view on digital communication?
So initially Twitter was text-based, and obviously it then moved into other visual formats around moments, and we had Vine for a bit as well, which was incredibly visual and a brilliant way of using stock frame and bringing video into the platform. I think the other thing about Twitter, though, that other than it being text-based initially, was that it was open, it was very live. You could use the data that you could see coming up on the platform to power some of your thinking and some of your insight. So it wasn't just about it being text. There was a lot in there that made it.
But it's a common perception, how people see it.
Absolutely, but I think it was a very rich creative tool. That shift to Snap. Snap was incredibly visual, full screen, vertical video. No one was doing that. The launch of Stories, a really compelling publishing side of the platform with great content partners, and then augmented reality. And I think that the shift that I thought about first of all was that the creative team that I'd built at Twitter were fantastic, absolutely amazing, and have gone on to do some incredible things. But it was a very different skill set to what was needed at Snap. What was needed at Snap were people that were more visually focused, that thought more visually, that thought a bit more about digital, visual and motion craft, and knew a bit more about video and things like that. So, but both were incredibly rich creative opportunities. They just had different user behaviors on each, and I think that's a really key thing. You have to look at the way that people use a platform to understand how a brand can exist in it and really exist in the right way and really add value and turn up in a way that will make people want to spend time with it.
You've spoken about making technology work for people, not the other way around. In a world full of digital noise, how do you craft experiences that truly connect?
I think that let me have a think about this.
Yeah, sure.
So I think with all marketing, as I've mentioned previously, you always start with people. What are people doing? How are they using a product? How are they using a platform? And you can see that in product design as well. A lot of great product design that's perceived as disruptive is actually a product that contributes to the world. So, for example, I've got an iPod for my music and I've got a mobile phone. Let's put the two together, so I now just have one device. That's just it's a disruptive device to that industry, but to me as a person, it contributes to my life. Yeah. Similarly with Uber, I'm struggling to find a taxi. I can now phone Uber. I can now use Uber to get a cab, more easily and more immediately. It disrupts that industry, but it contributes to my life. And I think that marketers need to, when they start with people, how are we going to contribute to people's life? I think disruption is a word that is overused by marketers. The idea that they're going to disrupt this space with their communication, we're going to be disruptive.
Disrupt sounds like a break something,
Exactly.
The word itself is like breaking.
Yeah, exactly. Disruption is fingers down a blackboard. It's kind of a negative equity. Yeah. Whereas when you bring something that is useful, it's interesting, it's entertaining, it's funny, you're not necessarily being disruptive, you're contributing. You're doing something that people will want to spend time with. And that can exist in many, many different ways. I think you can make a beautiful cinematic television ad, you can make a really funny, interesting, relevant kind of out-of-home experience. You can make a really quick, impactful piece of social video. You can make a really immersive and utility-based piece of augmented reality. All of those things tie into the way that people are using those different products, the different content consumption mindsets they're in.
Leading digital innovation means proving your vision is future, and that's never easy. How did you overcome resistance and prove AR was more than just a trend?
I think in all of marketing, so this is a broad philosophy for me from a marketing perspective, you start with people, and what people are doing, and they will invariably show you or tell you through their behaviours what it is that they like or they want or they're going to do. And I think, again, the product team at Snap that were building the user experience are the ones that saw people were wanting to use augmented reality for communication, for self-expression, and they built more experiences which led to more people using that part of the app, and in huge volumes. So when you've got an audience like that, you can take it to brands and you can say to brands, there are people doing this thing and we can help you be a part of that. Yeah. Now, the really interesting thing with augmented reality, and I believe this wholeheartedly, and I think this is one of the most powerful things about it, is that when you think about brands and marketers, over and above money, so people spending money with them, what they need is attention. If you don't have attention, if the attention of people, you can't tell them why you're different, what your values are, what the benefits of your product are. And that's really the kind of basis of all advertising. All advertising is about finding attention to communicate a message. In augmented reality, what you had was people paying more attention on their mobile phone than really in any other marketing format. More attention than what you'd find in a billboard or a banner or an in-feed video ad, or even on TV in a lot of cases. So we had a really exciting, emotive proposition with augmented reality, which is people are paying huge amounts of attention in this space. And that is an incredibly powerful, high intent state for them to be in, as a place where we can put you as a brand. And that the marketers, the brands that are doing that really well, are the ones that think holistically about all of those spaces and can bring some messaging continuity to the way they turn up there, while also thinking about the different format states.
Yeah, beautiful answer. Beautiful. When you said about this contributing, I felt the goosebumps because it's really, I had an impact of this word. The word itself is great. The word itself is great. Really, it's like you gave me an insight on that, because really people, they, like exploit this word. We disrupt that and that. For me, like you're breaking something. The word itself, like we break the market. We break your your habits. Yeah. We break something.
I think that from a business point of view, businesses can be industries can be disrupted. Businesses can be disrupted. Yeah. But people don't want to be disrupted.
For sure.
People are busy. They've got everything that's going on in the world to worry about. They've got whatever's happening in the news, whatever's happening in their personal life. People want brands and businesses to make their lives easier, better, more fun, more interesting, so they can do other things. So I do think it's a slight mindset shift for some marketers, but yeah.
Yeah, for me it's big. Okay, next one. Social media. Okay, let them move. Okay, nice one. Social media is often criticized for its impact on mental health. How can digital culture evolve to ensure technology helps, no harms people?
That's such a big question, and it's a really important one. It's one that's very close to my heart. I've got 2 teenage kids, and they both use their phones a lot. And
how many hours? Do you know?
I think I'd be too embarrassed to actually share how many hours, because I think that there is the responsibility of digital mental health and digital behaviour doesn't sit in just one particular area. It's everyone's responsibility. I think that platforms that create products have to have a sense of responsibility, like I was talking about with Snap, when we were making very considered efforts to be really thoughtful and act with real purpose around what was it that we were doing in augmented reality, and how were we changing the way that people looked, and was that having an impact on mental health, and were we acting in a responsible way, and we made changes to make sure that we were. So I think platforms have a responsibility. I think also governments have a responsibility, policymakers have a responsibility, and like I said, I've worked with the ASA a number of times, I've appeared in front of a parliamentary select committee, so there are things that happen within government, but I do think that in some cases, certainly when we're thinking about AI and the way that AI is being trained off the human capital that's gone into great pieces of creative work, I think there's probably some more that policymakers can do in that space. But I also think it's the responsibility of individuals. Certainly myself as a parent, I feel a great deal of responsibility around the digital mental health of my kids and the way that they interact with digital spaces, and we spend a lot of time talking to them about what they're doing and what they're finding and the type of content that they're watching. And then I also think that schools play a massive part in that as well, a huge role in that. So I do think that within that particular topic, which is a huge one, there are lots of different stakeholders of responsibility, and it's one that I think that we will constantly learn from and constantly need to rethink and reanalyze. And it's not just about
young. It's a big question, actually.
It's huge, and because it's not just about young people. It's older people as well. It's adults as well. It impacts all of us.
Sure. Every digital leader was once a beginner. What was the moment early in your career that made you believe you could change the industry?
Goodness, that's a great question. Well, I think that I've been really lucky to work with some, like I've said a couple of times, I think some really talented people where I've learned a huge amount, and I've definitely worked at some companies that have changed the industry, and I've been a part of some of those journeys. I think the overriding thing I've learned through all of them is the need to stay hungry for what's next. Stay hungry is maybe the wrong way of putting it, because I think that I'm naturally inquisitive. I like to learn new things, I like to do new things, I like to experiment with things and build things that are new, and that's naturally led me on a path to go to places where I could do just that and learn and build new things. So I'd say if I was talking to my younger self, I'd say stay hungry, keep learning new things. And I think actually if I think back to some of my younger years within advertising and marketing, I made a very concerted and considered effort to go to companies where I could learn more about creativity and creative thinking. And I didn't just stay in one particular track. So I didn't just stay in traditional advertising or digital marketing or consumer comms or experiential. I tried to work at lots of different places that gave me a really good view of lots of different ways of doing things. And I think in some instances, I took steps that were not necessarily even progression, they were lateral moves from a leveling point of view, or sometimes even a step backwards in terms of the amount of money I was making or salary, because I had a real appetite to just understand different ways of doing things. And ultimately that all came together to lead to really wonderful roles at some wonderful agencies and some wonderful platforms like Twitter and Snap in particular. But I think that was because I really went on a mission to absorb as much as I possibly could. So staying hungry, learning new things, but then also not forgetting that the fundamentals apply. The fundamentals of great marketing still apply, regardless of what innovative new format you might be working with or new innovative channel. It's still really about people's attention, how you can capture people's attention and keep it by creating things that are meaningful to them, useful to them, entertaining, really contributing to their lives.
Great, thank you. Do you want to have?
They're beautiful pictures.
What's going on here?
I really love the ones in the mountains are really particular.
You see the mountains here.
Yeah, there's lovely light in that one. Beautiful light.
Beautiful.
You can tell that someone's really.
And this is the candid wrestling. They call it horse rugby.
Horse rugby.
They wrestle, yeah. And
is that like polo, but with a rugby ball?
No, the horse. They have something. They have to take it from each other. But also they wrestle like this, and also horses help.
Wow.
They push.
Yeah, I really like the textures of these paintings. They're really beautiful.
Yeah, and that's how our ancient lads look like before.
This looks very romantic. I like what's going on here. These are two people deeply in love, or he's at least really giving his best, riding a horse and playing the guitar.
Sure.
Is this a famous person from history?
No, just archetypical warrior of that time. Will, you've worked with different generations of digital professionals. How has the perception of leadership in the digital space changed over the last decade?
I think we're going through one of the most interesting periods of change right now, and I think it's because the leaders that are working across agencies, marketing departments, understand that people are their greatest asset, and that the people within their businesses are all playing a role in building and shaping the industry that we want to work in. That's everybody's responsibility. We need to hire people that are representative of the type of industry that we want to work in. We need to hire people that are not just incredibly intelligent and bright and creative, but who are kind people that understand empathy and humanity. And I think we need to have a real focus on leveling some of the, I guess, kind of disparity that exists within the industry. And again, that is everybody's responsibility. I think it's very, very different from when I was young, when I was first starting out in the industry. We had a very different set of leaders and leadership styles, and there was certainly people with reputations for being tyrannical and slightly dictatorial. And thankfully, I think that is well past us, and an era that we won't really see again. But I do think it's incredibly exciting the way that I hear, some of the people in our business or some of the people that I've worked with before thinking about and talking about the future of the industry. I think it's incredibly exciting. We're going through such a brilliant period of technical change and innovation. We're going through a real period of change around, like I say, the perception and ability for people to really build and shape the industry that they want to work in. And I think it's a really exciting time. There's a phrase that I've carried with me for a really long time that I've heard a couple of leaders use in the past. One of them, a great dear friend who's sadly no longer with us, a guy called Simon Gill, used to say at kind of critical moments of creative or thinking or pre-pitch, or when we're about to deliver something, let's be tough on the work but kind to the people. And I think that's such an important philosophy. If we're going to deliver great work, we need to be able to have very straightforward, direct, constructive conversations that can be tough, but that doesn't mean that we need to be unkind to people. And I think that is a leadership philosophy that everyone can employ, no matter what stage of their career that they're at.
Yeah, that's big, that's big. Thank you very much for your time, Will.
Thank you.
Welcome to Kazakhstan.
Thank you very much. It's absolutely gorgeous. Thank you for being such a great host.